and welcome back to the Pop Culture Graveyard Podcast. I am Hollis. With me, as always, is Dave. Hello, Dave.
Good day, Hollis.
Good day. We might have given each other the Vulcan signal because this is the perfect follow-up film, I feel, to Star Trek. It is the 2017 film, Please Stand By. Had you ever seen or heard of this film prior to me bringing it up, Dave?
I had never seen nor heard of this film in any way, shape, or form.
I kind of think that's true of a lot of people listening right now.
Once I had watched it all the way through, though, I did notice a scene or two the clips had been used in Instagram stories.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, in a way, I was like, oh, this is a new thing now. Like, that is another place where I might have caught a snippet of it. I saw an Instagram story based on the Do You Know Who I Am? The Do You Know Who I Am joke.
That's great, yeah.
Yeah.
She pushes around the guy who's in charge of collecting the writing samples.
And you think she's using the classic line, like, do you know who my dad owns a bunch of car washes.
And he laughs the way I would if somebody pulled that line. And it leads to a wonderful twist ending, kind of. Not twist, but a wonderful little
If
surprise.
you don't know who I am, you can't find my particular package. And therefore, as long as I can get it into the bunch, I can leave.
Right.
And it works out great.
Can't believe you opened with that, but okay.
Yeah, it's one of the closing scenes.
Yeah, the big moment.
We might have to work around that.
This Ain't Your Daddy's podcast. We've come a long way from when we used to go chronologically. This film was directed by Ben Lewin. The screenplay was by Michael Golamko. He was a staff writer for the series Grimm for a while. I don't know if you remember that series, but it was pretty cool.
I remember its existence. I never watched it.
Yeah. Offbeat series. And this is an offbeat film. I found this film charming and uplifting and also very, very real because it does not mind setting this in a real world with real world problems. And, we just came off of Star Trek. And during that 2-part episode, we talked a lot about the different kinds of fans and the fandom that Star Trek engenders. And including cosplayers and people like us for whom the show is a fun, nostalgic touchstone. But this film pays tribute to a very different type of fan, folks who are locked in their own lonely worlds, but for whom the universe of Star Trek offers escape from the horrors of this world and the kind of like ethical, humanistic worldview that kind of puts them at peace. And so I think it's really nice to see that on display. And Dakota Fanning stars as that fan, Wendy. And I think she's terrific in this.
Yeah, I think you're so right. I think it's exactly those two things because you started with as an escape. And I thought, well, it's more than an escape. And then you added that, Spock, his emotions don't jive with society's emotion or the society that he's currently living in. His emotions work differently than the people who he lives with. And that's got to be a real nice thing to see over and over again in episodes. And he's the smartest guy, the strongest guy, and many say the handsomest guy. But he's this respected member. And while he is different, the crew works around those differences. And he struggles to live in a place where he's different. That's got to be a great feeling.
Spock is often at odds with his emotions because he's only half Vulcan and half human. And he's constantly finding those two halves of him in conflict. And I'm sure for Wendy, who is the lead in this film, she lives in a home for troubled individuals. She is autistic. She has an anger problem, among other problems, but her autism is a little bit more close to autistic savant, where she's got gifts, such as being able to accurately remember every single bit of information that's important to her, including trivia about Star Trek, which there's a lovely scene where her fellow mall workers try to stump her and they can't.
Oh, that's a great scene, yeah. In that scene, she's so many things. she's at work.
Right. Functioning.
Yeah. So she's out there working. She's now on a lunch break with her coworkers and neighboring coworkers. I don't know, from like the hot dog on a stick or something.
Right, right.
So, and I really think it's great that she's using these abilities that she's in a group home for having, because there's also some disabilities that come with them. She's using them for fun. She's using
Yeah.
them to socialize, and she's using them to make a little extra cash.
Yeah. Yeah, it's nice. It's fun.
Yeah.
Because more often than not, and the way we're introduced to her at her job, she's like working, and she says, "Welcome to Cinnabon. Would you like a Cinnabon?" Like by rote, she just repeats it over and over. And when she's preparing frosting the Cinnabons, her coworker Nemo, who has a crush on her, obviously tries to talk to her, and she's almost got tunnel vision. She's separate from her emotions, like Spock. And you get the feeling she can't turn them on or off when she wants to, or when society would dictate. So it's really nice to see her not alone throughout the whole film, but constantly people like her. People are drawn to her, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's a tough road to go down when you decide to make this movie.
Right.
And the worst thing you could do is get too nervous and not make it.
Yeah.
That would be terrible.
Yeah. What I was just thinking of was the film opens with her talking, Wendy talking about how light travels through the universe. And she says something like, it goes lonely and alone, hoping that it will reach someone. But what if it never arrives? You know, she's talking about light, but she's also talking about love and confidence and acceptance and happiness. You know, and that's a feeling that we've seen our lead characters express in different films we've covered, like Lars and the Real Girl, Booksmart, Moxie, and others. You know, her loneliness is palpable. And, you know, by the end of the film, we realize, almost Wizard of Oz like, she's never been alone. You know, there are people that love her and people that care. And that's the thing, too, that I think this film gets right. When someone has a diagnosis like that, it affects that person. But it's a diagnosis that bleeds out and affects everyone that loves them and everyone that is a friend or a family member. And it's a diagnosis for the whole family, really, to deal with.
Yeah. And I think the movie, bit off a tough thing to chew. And I think they did a very decent job.
Yeah.
And I also think they did a mostly positive, there's a lot of pitfalls. There's a lot of places to screw up. And, you can make us feel too sorry for the character. You can show unachievable goals by mistake, or
you can make it too unwatchable. You can make it that too many bad things happen to her and you're like, I can't take anymore before you get to the turnaround.
Yeah. So there's a lot can go wrong. And yet it's, Martin Luther King tells Nichelle Nichols, no, you have to. And I would, if Dakota Fanning said, I'm worried about how this portrayal is going to be seen. I'm worried about I might not do it. There would be someone who should say, no, you must do it. You must make this movie that shows that this woman who has autism is more capable than she ever realized, more capable than anyone ever realized. It's a must. It's important.
What's funny is, as you were saying that, and her how are people going to take this? I was reminded of the line in Tropic Thunder, "You don't go full retard." That is the line. Please forgive me.
It's the actual line.
It's the actual line. And the character in it, played by Ben Stiller, was in a film that is openly mocking and skewering I Am Sam. That's kind of what it was making fun of. And I just remembered that Dakota Fanning was the kid in I Am Sam. She's like Sean Penn's daughter.
Yeah, I vaguely remember that.
So it's funny that,
there's a connection.
Yeah. And she walks the tightrope perfectly, because between her tantrums and her notations in her pad and the few times that she freaks out and the few times that she bears down and gets something done, you believe every moment. You believe this is a real person. And the title of this film, which I love and doesn't seem to make sense until you watch the film, Please Stand By, is what she tells herself or what her caseworker and den mother, Toni Collette, tells her when she's having a tantrum and she needs to calm down. Please stand by, please stand by, please. Something about that phrase comforts her. And it's a lovely use as the title, I think.
It works in several ways too. Like obviously, if she's a Star Trek fan, that she sort of is a television fan, and "Please Stand By" is almost a early television phrase. Or we're having operating difficulties. Please stand by would be something that you would definitely hear while watching Star Trek.
Totally.
Also, if you're autistic and you're overstimulated and you're having this problem, it's a great thing to say to people around you. Stay there. Let me work through this. Please stand by.
Yeah.
I actually say stand by a lot. I used to occasionally say, please stand by.
You text it to me a lot.
Oh, yeah.
I know exactly what it means. It's perfect. Yeah.
Do you have those numbers that we were looking for? I'll go, please stand by.
Yeah.
And I'll go looking for them. Yeah.
Right.
It's a great little expression. And it's a great title for the movie, which I did not get until the movie was rolling. Yeah.
Right. Which I like. I like those little surprises. Like, oh, we got a movie title now. Yeah. I mentioned this was the screenplay was written by Michael Golamko, but he also wrote the play, a short play that this is based on. And you can almost get a sense of how they opened it up for a film based on that it was a play, because, a lot of the time she lives in her head, and we can see the character in this film is working on a Star Trek script. It's like the 50th anniversary of Star Trek, and Paramount has a call out for send us your Star Trek script that brings the universe together and, whatever. And she has been working on this diligently. There's a clock ticking now to get it in. And that's what the film is a journey to get her script to Paramount in time. You can see that as a play, it would totally work. She's in her room most of the time. She freaks out a bit, but she also can just walk around the stage or whatever. It's very insular, and there are few characters. And I really feel the less characters in a film, the more places you can get to emotionally. So Dave, how happy were you when Marla Gibbs from the Jeffersons showed up?
I totally was like, this is a chance. Hollis is going to get to say our beloved Marla Gibbs.
Yep, our beloved Marla Gibbs.
Yeah, it really works. And again, there's another connection to 70s television.
Right. We sang her praises in our Norman Lear tribute episode.
Yeah, I've always been a fan. Someone who could wisecrack to George Jefferson immediately wins a spot in your heart. And she's terrific in it. Her being Marla Gibbs, normally I don't like to recognize the actor, as you know. But it's sort of a shortcut to trusting her.
Yeah.
Granted, her very first scene shows that she's a good guy, but it's kind of a shortcut to feeling close to her.
Yeah.
And she immediately falls into grandma mode.
Right.
And does, and she's the juxtaposition to the horrible people that Wendy runs into.
Yeah, you see right away her in relation.
Jesus, California, man, is full of jerks.
Yeah.
Who knew? I can't see things going this poorly for someone in New York.
No.
I feel like it would have gone better had she needed to get to a studio in New York.
Yeah. No, New Yorkers are good people, man. The arrival of Marla Gibbs, something about her being old or something, it made me reframe the film. And I see it almost as like a New Jack, Harry and Tonto, which was a film from the 70s starring Art Carney. And he goes on kind of a cross-country trip by himself with his cat, Tonto.
Oh, okay.
And so it's this sojourn, and there's an arc for his character, and it's a lonely character, and they're looking for their place in the world. Marla Gibbs, her character, made the ending for Wendy possible, because she said something like, because it was like, why don't you live with your kids or something? And she's like, oh, they got their own lives. They don't want to be saddled with me or whatever. You'll find that out. You got to do your own thing. Wendy's character couldn't understand why her sister, played by Alice Eve, couldn't just take her back, couldn't let her live with her.
Yeah, and I'm sure she also felt like, I'm the only person in the world whose sister doesn't want her back. I'm the only
Right.
person in the world. I've got this thing that's wrong with me, and because of that, a family member doesn't want me to be part of their lives. And
Mm-hmm.
Marla Gibbs says, that happens to everybody, honey. And
Yep.
she doesn't even realize that she's solving the problem for Wendy. She
No.
doesn't give it to her as, oh, here's the answer to your problem.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a regular answer to, why don't you live with your family? It's like,
Yeah.
oh, they got there. I think she says something specific along the lines of like, people get their own thing going, and then it's time for you to move on and get your own thing going, or something like
Yeah,
that.
she said
Like,
it somehow in an empowering way.
yeah, she said it like quiltable.
Yeah, it didn't seem sad at all.
Is Marla Gibbs okay?
I was just going to say the crazy thing about that scene, Marla Gibbs' character gets Wendy on a bus to help her get part of the way. And this retirement village bus goes off the road. Being driven by an ancient guy who's falling asleep at the wheel in the middle of the night, goes off the road and crashes. And then we see Wendy in the hospital, but we see no other person. Like, are all those old people dead?
I assume they're all so fragile that they did not survive the crash.
That's
like,
what I assume.
No.
They're all red shirts.
Yeah. I think Roger V. Burton might have been the bus driver. I was just looking at the cast pictures, and he's pretty much the oldest guy in the cast pictures. Right. So I think it's him. But yeah, I really would have appreciated, as Wendy was sneaking out, if she had passed one of the hospital rooms and Marla had given her a thumbs up from bed.
That would have been the best.
Like, go get him, honey. Because we really deserved at least some. I mean, I think the filmmaker would say, what is wrong with you? Why are you predicting that Marla Gibbs and her friends are dead?
Right. But you know what? If you have Marla in the hallway and like, oh, thank God you're okay, honey. And she's okay. And we're like, oh, good, Marla's okay. Then it becomes, Marla's not going to leave her.
Yeah, she'll be friends for life. Yeah.
Yeah. And she would look over it. We can't get where we need to go.
I would have taken a wink and a thumbs up. I think a lot of these filmmakers don't know how anxious we all are.
Yeah.
I even slipped into, something bad going to happen to Pete?
Yeah, Pete, Wendy's dog.
Pete, the little chihuahua. And this happens to me whenever a dog becomes a character. I start to worry that the reason the animal is there is so that we can experience the loss. Yeah. And I get really scared.
Yeah.
I get really scared. Is that true? Yeah, I get very anxious.
Scared for them.
I get scared for the animal, and sometimes I'm like, I don't need this. You can actually look up. You can go to doesthedogdie.com.
Oh wow!
And you can check
to make sure you're not triggered by a film you're about to see.
If you're like, you know what, I'm not going to be able to handle it. You go search at doesthedogdie.com, and they'll tell you if the dog dies in the movie you're watching. And
that's the internet firing on all cylinders, right there.
That's what I was going to say. And of course, there's it branches off into cats, and then there's all kinds of possible things that might upset you that you can find out in advance. And people are like, oh, for fuck's sake, just watch them. It's like, you know what? I can tell you're not speaking from experience. It's a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
That is the internet firing on all cylinders. I totally agree.
She's trying to deliver this script in fits and starts. All along the way, she gets good feedback from people who aren't Paramount. Even Marla Gibbs' character says something lovely to her, and it's something like, I wish my grandson could meet you. He would so get what you're talking about. When she breaks down the script. And then later, Dave, did you enjoy Patton Oswalt as the cop who speaks Klingon?
You know I did. He was not just a cop who speaks Klingon. He was also the cop who kept putting his arm out in front of his partner, like, and you can see the annoyance. Like, she always does this. She always is coming on too strong. She's always being too much of a cop. And he's like, I got this.
He's the spoonful of sugar guy. And his partner is just like hand on the gun.
Yeah. Hand on the gun. There's this terrified
little autistic girl.
woman, yeah, and with her little puppy, or no, now she's without her little puppy. But
Mhm.
anyway, and come out from behind her. It's like, whoa, whoa, whoa.
Yeah, yeah,
What are
yeah.
you doing? And it's, it's a true thing. That person exists. The Patton Oswalt character, that's made up.
Yeah. There's another character who breaks down the script and says how good it is, which is Toni Collette's character's son, who ends
I
up going
liked
on the
him. I
ride.
thought he was good.
I liked him too. And I love that he unlocks Wendy for Toni Collette. He
Mm,
unlocks why she loves Star Trek. And they're talking, and he's talking about Spock and the battle with his emotions that we talked about at the opening. And she's like, holy shit, I guess I better read the script. But she says something when she's reading the script when her son comes in. I don't know if you'd like to make it the quote for this week's episode, Dave, but it's, what's a tribble?
yeah, that was
But
good.
it's
That was
not
good.
it's not a Wendy quote, but it just struck me funny.
Yeah, they
That
gave her
that shows you what she's up against, what Wendy's up against, you know.
they gave her "What's a Tribble," which is good, and they also gave her, I
L-
understand it's a whole Star Wars universe, but I don't get what's up with this Kirk guy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
which,
it's great.
that's pretty
And the
standard
kid
internet
says, like,
stuff.
just ram us into a truck right
Yeah,
now. We
drive
deserve
into
to
a
die.
wall right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, drive us into a truck right now.
Oh,
He
it's
has a pretty
great.
nice arc. He starts as, like, the standard rooting son of a person who has so many people that they care for, they have no time
Yeah.
for them.
Right.
And he has a nice arc. Also, he's the second example of Scotty, the group home, the person who runs the group home, conveniently, awesomely named Scotty.
Yeah, that's great.
Totally
Toni Collette
works.
is Scotty.
Yeah. She's not perfect either in the world of autism and in the world of child rear, in the world of
Hmm.
parenting. When you only concentrate on the rules, you can miss a lot.
Right.
And all she's concentrating on with Wendy is the rule. When do you shower? When do you eat? What do you watch? When do you
Mhm.
watch it? Never cross this street. But look what happens when she breaks the first rule she breaks, an entire world opens up to her. She learns so much, she accomplishes so much. And then her son is, what did I tell you? Go to school, do your homework. Go to school, do your homework. That's all I ask. Is that, and then she says, what's up with this Star Trek thing? So she starts the conversation, and immediately
Mhm.
her and her son are buddy copping this missing girl situation and killing it and having their best part of their relationship to date.
Yeah, I was going to say what's another great thing about this film is that the character's arc obviously enriches and nourishes the character, but it also has that effect on all the ancillary characters who care about this character, who witness her journey and are buoyed by it. They're like, actually, she's
Mhm.
a really impressive girl. You have no idea what she can do. And that's the thing, too. Like I was talking about, the diagnosis affects everyone close to the person. So does the person's victories that they
Mhm.
experience. They feed people, in a way, and they give people a few peaks to go along with the valleys that this diagnosis has dealt them. And so it
Yeah.
kind of balances out their life in a way that all of us deal with, you know?
Yeah, and we're not all living in a movie. Like, we don't all rise to the occasion and dedicate our lives to making sure that everything, like, I liked that this movie had a sister who was like, I just don't have time or patience or energy for this. I'm trying to start a life. I'm going to put my sister in a group home." And it's like, oh my God, she is certainly portrayed as, like, in the wrong, for not having more faith in her sister, for not giving her sister more chance to prove herself or whatever. But I think that makes her a very realistic person. Not everybody
Yeah,
becomes a saint when they find this out, or when they're dealing. Some people, and it's okay, run out of patience. Some people
right.
run out of energy. Some people decide, I want to start a life of my own. Um, and it deals with that hard part. And it's hard to
Yeah,
hand your 1-year-old baby to someone who the day before you saw hitting themselves.
yeah,
It's not an easy thing to do, and it's a lot to ask of someone. And I
yeah.
thought they did a good job of showing a real human who isn't up to the task.
Right. So just returning to Patton Oswalt, I love that she gets the little feedback that she's gotten along the way, because she can go deep into her script with Patton Oswalt's character, the cop, because
Yeah,
he
which is
goes
perfect for
everywhere.
her.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And Patton Oswalt is that guy in real life. So like he gives her that feedback. Scotty's son gives her the feedback. And so these people are like giving her those breadcrumbs that like kind of reinforce, I am good at this. I am good. And when she blows up at the guy, all of those things front loaded it, where like it's hard to write something. You don't know what it's like to write something. She like goes through this mantra kind of in her head, and then she explodes at him, and she's right. It is hard to write something, and that guy doesn't know what it's like to start with the blank page. That guy doesn't, know how difficult it is to finish something. Forget start something.
Hmm.
So her standing up for herself is really the thing that breaks the wall that makes everything possible for the rest of her future, one hopes. Even crossing the street was difficult. But then you see when she's dropped off the script, they're just hanging out in the car, and she comes
Yeah.
walking across the street, and they're like, "Oh, here she comes." Like
If you look close, she's actually crossing. Well, it's a countdown.
right.
So she's actually even cut it close, but it's no longer like we can't let her out. She could get run over. It's like she can't
Yeah,
get run over. She's got that part, and
yeah.
not everyone does. Autism, I know from experience and from general knowledge, is different. I saw Dakota Fanning in my poking around. Dakota Fanning quoted someone, and she said, one of the first things I learned was they say, if you know one person with autism, you know one person with autism.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, and I was like, that's a really,
It's called a spectrum for a reason.
there you go.
I mean,
Yeah,
people fall everywhere on that line.
yeah.
Um,
Which also, frees you up when you're making a movie to be,
mhm.
this is Wendy's autism.
Yeah.
Your autism may differ, and I'm sure it does, but very impressive.
I liked seeing the script dramatized, what she pictured in her mind and the storyline. And at one point towards the end, two characters of Kirk and Spock are wearing these spacesuits like they do in a couple of episodes. They're very
Yeah,
wacky.
they're actually
Except
actual accurate. Yeah.
Yeah, except you can see through the visor on the Star Trek ones, and on these they're opaque because they want to do the reveal of Kirk dying is her sister, and she portrays herself as Spock and lifts her thing. And it's kind of interesting even that she puts herself in that power position with the sister. And I don't know what in her mind that means. Like, if anything happens to you, don't worry, I'll take care of the baby, kind of a thing. Or,
Right.
who
Yeah.
knows
Yeah.
how many levels she's working on. But her script is something ridiculous, like 450 pages or something. It's 3 times the length of a normal script. But she goes a million places in it. And the funny thing is, if anyone from the actual show or the creative team of any of the movies like read her script like for real and not just some reader at Paramount,
Right.
they'd be like, we got to get her in the writer's room. She's the perfect engine for a writing room. Just like, have we done this? Have we done that? What's like an old
Episode
storyline we can
16, the scene 12. Yeah, you did
exactly?
it.
She'd be a
Yeah.
walking show Bible,
It'd be yeah, exactly. It'd be a combination of there'd be creative input, but they'd
Hmm.
also have this human computer
Right.
to, I mean,
She'd be the Spock of that room.
she'd be set too.
Yeah, I
That would be a
know.
great, right? And then,
Yeah,
when she was done working on Discovery, she could work on Brave New
right.
Worlds. And when she was done
Well,
with Brave New Worlds,
that's the great thing. Like I was saying about the breakthrough, like by the end of it, if she's done that, she's absolutely going to keep writing and sending in scripts different places. And yourself, there are many, many new iterations of the Star Trek universe. So there's always new shows and they're always starved for content. And
mhm,
I could see her character getting on one of them after a while of sending them in, you know?
they are starved for
I
content.
believe it. They would have to
I've
be at this point.
Star Trek Brave New Worlds, they were next to this anomaly, and somebody was working on beaming things into the anomaly to make it was a barrier they had to cross or something.
Oh, wow.
and they accidentally were listening to music, and they accidentally beamed music in it to see what would happen, and it bounced back and affected the entire ship, and the rest of the episode is a musical.
Oh my God.
And I loved it. There was a refrain. Why am I singing? Why am I singing?
Right. Yeah.
And the first person is Spock. Another great. I don't know who plays Spock in this particular iteration, but another. I have to say, in my opinion, there's been nothing but great Spocks since Nimoy. I've always been very happy with the Spocks.
Yeah, I could not believe how good Quinto was.
Thank you, Quinto.
The movie,
just remembered something. I wanted to urge people to check out the Zachary Quinto, Leonard Nimoy Audi commercial, which is just amazing.
That writes itself. That's great.
Yeah, they race to a golf club. I know I'm off on several tangents, but they race to a golf club, and Zachary Quinto gets there first because of his Audi, is able to hold his golf clubs easier and has good GPS and gets him there first.
Right.
And then Spock rolls in. Instead of getting out of the car, he puts his hand on the window and looks at Zachary Quinto, and he says, "You have and always will be my friend." And then he gets out and he's like, "I won." And Spock puts his arm around him and goes, "Technically, the bet was who'd be inside." And he pinches Zachary Quinto's neck. Zachary Quinto falls down, and Spock walks into the building.
Wow.
A great commercial.
Yeah, I got to check that out. Jeez. I will see your tangent and raise you one.
Okay.
Back when we were talking about on Star Trek, I talked about an episode, This Side of Paradise, where Spock is allowed to, by these spores from a flower, fall in love.
Yes.
And midway through the episode, I'm like, fuck you, Kirk, leave him there. You know how hard this is for him. You know how much joy he's actually feeling right now. Leave him alone. And it reminded me, because you brought up a musical episode, it reminded me of the musical episode from Buffy, the Vampire Slayer, where Buffy dies and her friends, through their own selfishness, bring her back. And they think she's going to be thrilled and like she'll be thanking them and like, oh, good, I'm alive again. And she's actually like, why would you do this to me? I was somewhere good. I think it was heaven. Like, and it's so sad. And I'm like, oh, you bastards. But yeah,
our hearts are directly connected to song. You can claim that it makes you sick, and you can turn it off the second. If you turn it off the second Spock says, "Why am I singing?" You didn't turn it off because you hated it. You turned it off because it touched you, and that made you nervous.
Right.
You know,
big strong guy.
I recommend the Brave New World musical episode.
That's cool. So I think the poster is great. It's just got a kind of close-up, semi-close-up of my beloved Dakota Fanning. I love Dakota Fanning. And she's giving the Spock live long and prosper hand signal. And then up at the top, the tagline is boldly go, period.
Yeah. Oh, that's so perfect.
Isn't it perfect? You and I would rack our brains and we'd probably go overboard, and come up with something longer or something. It's perfect. Boldly go.
We might have found.
We might have landed. Well, you and I would. We might have landed on it. But it would take a while.
It's really on the money. That's really good. I'm very happy with that.
Yeah, I like that a lot.
Was this movie successful? I mean, did it do all right?
The box office is somewhere around $400,000. Now, I don't know what this costs to make, but I would guess it's at least that. So I see it as something that if it is lucky and they kept costs down, they broke even. But I would think Dakota Fanning and Toni Collette cost money, more than that. That's the quote.
Maybe they have someone in their lives and they wanted to be part of it. I like to think that maybe that's the case.
I would love that. Yeah.
I could see Patton getting on board that way.
Absolutely.
I believe Alice Eve that's the sister.
Yeah.
She is someone in some version of Star Trek.
Oh, yeah. I could see her in that uniform.
She is in Star Trek Into Darkness, which I
Ooh.
believe was one of those Chris Pine movies.
Oh, yeah. I have that.
Of course you do. You have it
That's
on
good.
Blu-ray, perhaps?
I do. Yeah. Last time I saw her was she ends up towards the end of the TV series Entourage. She marries the lead character, Vincent
Oh,
Chase, at the end
really?
of it.
Wow.
And then they pick up in the Entourage movie and they're divorced. But like the whole thing tied it up in a bow and they're like, no, this is really it. But yeah. In closing, this is a somewhat downbeat movie. But if you enjoyed some of the things we did, like Lars and the Real Girl or Metal Lords, and you're looking for a film that's set in a real world with real people, and you want a bit of growth, you want to see an arc, you want to see some positivity, this is just a fantastic ride. And if you're a Star Trek fan, you can even take it up another notch.
Yeah, I would definitely recommend it. And thanks to us at Pop Culture Graveyard, you can now watch it not worrying whether or not the dog dies. The
Yeah, that's
dog does
true.
not die. The dog is actually treated wonderfully by everyone he encounters. No one kicks the dog.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
true. And the dog stows
actually,
away too. So it's not even like she went with her dog. Like Petey forced himself on this trip.
Did you catch Petey's last trick was to show up at the sister's house?
I love that they gave Petey a little epilogue after the credits or during the credits. That dog just loves her so much that he's always standing by.
Perhaps the name of the episode should be "This is what happens when you pee on the bus."
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, it's so good. I just I love Dakota Fanning. I could watch her in anything. She's so good. She was so good in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, the last film with her we did.
Her name always reminds me of something a friend said once that just stuck with me. But she came up and he said something like she was kind of awkward in that. Kind of felt like two guys in a Dakota Fanning suit.
Oh,
Like
wow.
that was his way of describing how that she was awkward. It felt like two guys in a Dakota Fanning suit. And I was
Wow,
like,
that's funny.
well, he's a guy who tends to have colorful ways of describing things. And
Wow, that is really
Yeah.
funny. I like that.
yeah, the Rev Timmy James.
Hey, Timmy, we love you. All right, pal. So
All right.
thanks, everybody. Go see this movie. It is streaming on like 5 or 6 different streaming platforms.
I watched it for free.
Excellent. Do that.
Yep. Do that. Watch it for free. They might make you watch some commercials in the beginning.
Yeah. Well worth it. Thanks, Dave.
Thank you, Hollis.
Hollis and Dave would like to thank you for enjoying Pop Culture Graveyard.